English Daily, the podcast.
Your English journey starts now. Hey, English learners, welcome back to your podcast, the English Daily Podcast.
Yes, we're so happy to have you here today, my friend.
Today's episode is all about negotiating in a business agility environment, and it's going to be super practical for you.
That's right. We're going to talk about phrases that will help you navigate fast-moving startup environments.
So whether you're preparing for a job interview, working with international clients, or just want to understand business English better, you'll find something valuable here.
And Anna, I think this is such an important topic because the business world is changing so fast nowadays, right?
Absolutely. The concept of business agility is everywhere these days. Let's dive right in and explore this exciting topic together.
Okay, Anna, I've been hearing so much about business agility lately. Can we start by breaking down what it actually means?
Great question, Jack. Business agility really refers to a company's ability to move quickly and wisely when facing challenges or opportunities. It's about being flexible, adaptive, and responsive in a fast-changing market.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about being fast, but also about being smart with how you adapt.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. It's like when a startup notices a competitor launching a similar product, they need to quickly pivot their strategy or innovate to stay ahead. That's agility in action.
Can you give us an example from your own experience, Anna?
Sure. A few years ago, I was working with a small tech startup that had built an app for restaurant reservations. Suddenly, a big company launched a similar product with much more funding. The startup could have panicked, but instead, they quickly pivoted to focus on a niche market, small boutique restaurants that wanted a more personalized experience. They didn't just react, they adapted wisely.
That's a great example. So agility means thinking on your feet, but also making smart decisions under pressure.
Absolutely. And that's why negotiation skills become so crucial in these environments. When things change quickly, you need to be able to communicate effectively and negotiate terms that work for everyone involved.
So how does negotiation differ in a traditional business versus a startup with high agility?
In traditional businesses, negotiations often follow rigid structures and established processes. There's usually more time to prepare, and the stakes might feel more predictable. But in startups and agile environments, things are much more fluid. You might need to negotiate on the spot, adapt your terms quickly, and build relationships fast.
Wow, that sounds challenging. I imagine you need completely different skills.
You do. But that's the exciting part. Once you learn these phrases and techniques, you'll be able to navigate these conversations with confidence. And that's exactly what we're going to practice today.
I'm ready to learn. This is going to be so useful. Okay, so let's get into the actual phrases. What are some key expressions we should know when talking about adapting to market shifts?
I'm so glad you asked. Let's start with some really common and useful phrases. First, we have pivot. As a verb, it means to change direction or strategy.
I've heard pivot so many times in startup contexts. Can you use it in a sentence for us?
Of course. Given the recent market feedback, we need to pivot our focus to B2B customers. See how it works? You're showing that you're adapting based on new information.
What about when you need to acknowledge that circumstances have changed?
Good one. You could say, given the current landscape, or in light of recent developments. These phrases help you introduce why you're changing your approach. For example, in light of recent developments in the market, we may need to revisit our pricing strategy.
Those are really practical. What about when you want to suggest being more flexible?
You could say, we need to adopt a more agile approach, or let's stay nimble here. The word nimble is great. It suggests you can move quickly and easily, like a dancer. We should remain nimble in our decision-making process.
What if you want to suggest testing something new quickly?
That's where phrases like, let's do a quick pilot, or we could run a beta test come in handy. Let's run a pilot program to see how this works before fully committing. This shows you're willing to experiment, but also want to manage risk.
I love that. It's like testing the waters before diving in. What about when you need to respond to unexpected competition?
Another great scenario, you might say, we need to be more competitive in our positioning, or we should differentiate our offering. For example, given the new competitor, we need to differentiate our value proposition.
And what if the change is really significant, like you need to completely change your business model?
That's a big shift, and you need to be very clear about it. You could say, we're undergoing a fundamental transformation, or this represents a paradigm shift for our company. But be careful, those are pretty strong phrases. We've realized that we need to fundamentally shift our business model to survive in this market.
Impressive. These phrases are so valuable. I can see how they'd be essential in any business meeting.
Practice them, Jack. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become. And remember, it's not just about the words, it's about understanding the mindset behind agility.
Now, let's get into the actual negotiation aspect. What phrases should we use when we need to negotiate quickly in an agile environment?
This is where things get really interesting. In fast-paced environments, you need phrases that show you're flexible, but also clear about your boundaries. Let's start with, we can be flexible on. This is great because it shows willingness to compromise while still maintaining control.
How does that work in practice?
Say something like, we can be flexible on the timeline, but we need to finalize the budget by Friday. See? You're giving something while still holding firm on what's important.
That's clever. What about when you need to speed up a decision?
Perfect question. You could say, let's fast track this, or we need to expedite the process. Given our timeline, can we fast track this negotiation? This shows you understand the urgency without being pushy.
And what if you need to buy some time without saying no?
That's a delicate situation. You could say, let's table this for now and revisit it tomorrow, or can we circle back to this point? These phrases let you delay without completely rejecting the idea. I like this proposal, but can we circle back to it after we've reviewed the numbers?
Those are really useful. What about when you want to suggest a compromise?
You could say, let's meet in the middle, or how about we split the difference? But in professional settings, you might want something more formal, like, perhaps we can find a middle ground, or let's explore a mutually beneficial solution.
What if the other party suggests something that won't work for you?
That's when you need to politely decline while keeping the relationship positive. You could say, I appreciate your suggestion, but that doesn't align with our current priorities. Or, unfortunately, that won't work for us at the moment, but here's what we can offer. This keeps the conversation constructive.
I love how these phrases balance firmness with friendliness. That's such an important skill.
It really is, Jack. And remember, negotiation in agile environments isn't about winning or losing. It's about finding solutions that work for everyone while moving quickly.
What about when you need to build consensus quickly among team members or stakeholders?
Building consensus in a fast-moving environment is both challenging and important. Let's talk about some phrases that help. First, let's align on this. It's a quick way to suggest getting everyone on the same page. Before we proceed, let's align on the key objectives.
What about when you want to summarize what everyone's agreed on?
Great follow-up. You could say, so to summarize what we've agreed upon, or just to confirm, we're all on the same page that this ensures everyone understands and remembers the decisions made.
What if there's disagreement and you need to find common ground?
That's where phrases like, what if we focus on what we all agree on first? Or, let's identify our shared goals here, become really helpful. You're redirecting the conversation toward unity rather than division.
And when you need to make a decision without everyone agreeing 100%.
You could say, let's move forward with this and adjust as needed. Or we can iterate on this as we go. The word iterate is so common in agile contexts. It means making improvements over time. Let's make a decision and iterate as we learn more.
I love that mindset. It's okay to not be perfect right away.
Exactly. That's the beauty of agility. You don't have to have all the answers today. You just need to be willing to adapt and improve as you go.
What about when you need to get buy-in from someone important?
You might say, I'd love to get your input on this, or your perspective would be really valuable here. Showing that you value someone's opinion is a powerful way to build buy-in. Before we finalize this, I'd love to get your thoughts, Sarah.
I love these phrases. They're so practical. I can imagine using them in real meetings.
Practice them, Jack. The more you use these expressions, the more natural they'll sound, and they'll help you sound like a true professional in any business setting.
Let's talk about responding to unexpected challenges. What phrases should we use when things don't go as planned?
This is such an important topic. In agile environments, unexpected changes are the norm, not the exception. Let's start with acknowledging the situation. You could say, we've encountered an unexpected challenge, or we've hit a snag, but we're working on a solution.
What if the change is really significant and affects your original plan?
Then you need to be transparent. You could say, we need to recalibrate our approach, or it looks like we need to revisit our original plan. The word recalibrate is great. It suggests adjusting without completely starting over. Based on the new data, we need to recalibrate our timeline.
What about when you want to show resilience and determination?
You could say, we're committed to finding a solution, or we're determined to make this work. But also show that you're realistic. We recognize the challenges, and here's how we plan to address them.
And when you need to ask for help or additional resources?
That's a crucial skill. You could say, we could use some additional support on this, or to meet our goals, we'll need to allocate more resources. It's important to be clear about what you need. To hit this deadline, we'll need an additional developer for the next 2 weeks.
Being upfront about needs is so important.
It really is. And what about when you want to turn a challenge into an opportunity? You could say, this actually presents an opportunity for us to, or we can leverage the situation to. Showing that you can find the positive in difficult circumstances is a valuable skill.
What about when you need to explain a delay or setback to stakeholders?
You could say, we've experienced some delays, but we're implementing corrective measures. Or, while we faced obstacles, here's our path forward. The key is to be honest, but also show that you have a plan. We've encountered some challenges, but our team is actively working on solutions, and we expect to be back on track by next week.
These phrases help you communicate professionally even in difficult situations.
Exactly, Jack. And remember, transparency and honesty build trust, even when the news isn't great.
Now, let's talk about something really important: how to stay customer-focused while being agile. This seems like a tricky balance.
You're so right, Jack. It's a common challenge in startups. You need to move fast, but you can't lose sight of your customers. Let's start with phrases that show you're listening to customer feedback. Based on customer feedback, we're making adjustments. Or, we've heard our users loud and clear.
What about when you need to explain a change to customers?
Great question. You could say, we've made some changes to better serve you. Or, we're evolving to meet your needs. The key is to frame changes as improvements for the customer. We've listened to your feedback, and we're excited to announce some improvements to our service.
What if the change might upset some customers?
That's a delicate situation. You could say, we understand this might be an adjustment, and we're here to support you. Or, we appreciate your understanding as we improve. Showing empathy is crucial. We know this is a change, and we want to make sure you're supported during this transition.
How do you keep the customer at the center of your decisions?
You could say, our customers are at the heart of every decision we make, or we're keeping the customer experience top of mind. But also show that you're data-driven, or balancing customer feedback with data to make the best decisions.
I love how these phrases show both empathy and professionalism.
And that's the key, Jack. In agile environments, it's easy to get caught up in speed and change, but never forget who you're serving. Your customers should always be at the center of your decisions.
Any final thoughts on balancing agility with customer focus?
You could say, we're committed to being responsive while maintaining quality, or we want to move fast without compromising on customer experience. These phrases show that you understand both the need for speed and the importance of quality. Our goal is to be agile in our approach, but unwavering in our commitment to customer satisfaction.
This has been so informative, Anna. I feel like I've learned so much today.
Me too, Jack. These are such valuable skills for any business professional nowadays.
Now let's dive into our vocabulary breakdown. I know our listeners are excited to learn these key phrases in depth.
I'm so glad we got to this section. Let's go through each phrase carefully so you can start using them in your own conversations.
First up, let's talk about pivot. This is such a common word in startup vocabulary.
Yes, pivot as a verb means to change direction or strategy. In business, it often means fundamentally changing your approach. Example, after 6 months, we realized our initial product wasn't working, so we pivoted to a different market. Common mistake. Don't confuse it with pivot as in physically turning around. In business, it's always about strategy.
What's another important phrase?
Let's talk about fast track. This means to speed up a process or decision. Example, given the urgency, can we fast track this approval? Alternative, expedite has a similar meaning. We're trying to expedite the delivery. Common mistake, don't use it when you want to slow something down.
Got it. What about circle back?
Circle back means to return to a topic later. It's very common in meetings. Example, let's circle back to this point after we've reviewed the budget. Alternative, revisit or come back to. Can we revisit this next week? Common mistake, make sure you actually circle back. Don't use it as a way to avoid answering.
What about meet in the middle?
Meet in the middle means to find a compromise. Each party gives up something to reach an agreement. Example, we couldn't agree on the price, so we met in the middle at $5,000. Alternative, find middle ground or split the difference. Common mistake, don't use it when you want one party to completely give in.
What's another great phrase?
Let's talk about iterate. This means to repeatedly improve something over time. Example, we'll launch a basic version and then iterate based on user feedback. Alternative, refine or improve. We'll refine the product based on data. Common mistake, it's not just about repeating, it's about improving with each iteration.
What about align?
Align means to get everyone on the same page or to agree on something. Example, let's align on the key objectives before we start the project. Alternative, get on the same page or synchronize. We need to synchronize our efforts. Common mistake, don't forget that alignment requires communication.
What's another important one?
Let's talk about on the same page. This phrase means everyone has the same understanding. Example, just to make sure we're all on the same page, we're aiming for a March launch. Alternative, aligned or in agreement. Common mistake, don't assume everyone is on the same page. Always confirm.
What about deliverables?
Deliverables are the tangible outputs or results that need to be completed. Example, what are the key deliverables for this project? Alternative, outputs or results. Common mistake, don't confuse it with delivery. Deliverables are the things you produce.
What's another useful phrase?
Let's talk about stakeholder. This refers to anyone who has an interest in or is affected by a project. Example, we need to get buy-in from all the stakeholders before making this decision. Alternative, decision maker or key player. We need management support for this. Common mistake, Remember that stakeholders can be both internal and external.
What about buy-in?
Buy-in means getting someone's support or agreement, especially from people in power. Example, we need executive buy-in to proceed with this initiative. Alternative, support or approval. We need management support for this. Common mistake, buy-in needs to be earned, not just requested.
What's next?
Let's talk about touch base. This means to briefly connect or check in with someone. Example, let's touch base next week to see how things are going. Alternative, check in or connect. I'll check in with you tomorrow. Common mistake, keep it brief. Touch base implies a quick conversation.
What about bandwidth?
In business, bandwidth refers to the capacity or availability to take on work. Example, I don't have the bandwidth to take on another project right now. Alternative, capacity or availability. Do you have capacity for this task? Common mistake, don't use it to mean just time. It includes resources and energy.
What's another important one?
Let's talk about move the needle. This means to make a noticeable difference or impact. Example, this change won't move the needle. We need something more significant. Alternative, make an impact or make a difference. Common mistake, don't use it for small changes.
What about low-hanging fruit?
Low-hanging fruit refers to easy goals or tasks that can be achieved with minimal effort. Example, let's start with the low-hanging fruit to show quick progress. Alternative, easy wins. Common mistake, don't dismiss these tasks. They're great for building momentum.
What's next?
Let's talk about scalable. This means something that can grow or expand easily. Example, we need a scalable solution that can handle growth. Alternative, expandable or growth-ready. Common mistake, don't confuse with flexible. Scalable specifically refers to growth.
What about pain point?
Pain point refers to a problem or frustration that customers or users experience. Example, we identified the main pain point. Customers were confused by the checkout process. Alternative, problem or challenge. Common mistake, understanding pain points is crucial for solving problems.
One more important phrase?
Let's talk about value proposition. This is the unique benefit that a product or service provides. Example, our value proposition is fast, affordable delivery. Alternative, unique selling point or USP. Common mistake, make sure it's clear and compelling.
What about MVP?
MVP stands for a minimum viable product, the most basic version of a product that can be released. Example, we'll launch an MVP first and then add features over time. Alternative, beta version or basic version. Common mistake, don't try to include everything in your MVP.
What's another key phrase?
Let's talk about runway. This refers to how much time and money a startup has before running out. Example, with our current burn rate, we have about 12 months of runway. Alternative, time left or resources. Common mistake, always know your runway.
What about burn rate?
Burn rate is how quickly a company spends its money. Example, we need to reduce our burn rate to extend our runway. Alternative, spending rate or cash usage. Common mistake, lower burn rate is usually better for startups.
And our last phrase.
Let's talk about go-to-market strategy. This is the plan for launching a product to customers. Example, our go-to-market strategy includes social media and influencer partnerships. Alternative, launch plan or market entry strategy. Common mistake, don't skip this step.
This vocabulary list is so comprehensive, Anna.
Practice these phrases, everyone. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become.
Now it's time for our reflection questions. These will help you think about how to apply what we've learned today.
Let's start with our first question. Think about a time when you had to adapt quickly to a change. What did you learn from that experience?
Question 2. How might you use the phrase pivot in a professional conversation about your job or business?
Question 3. In your experience, what's the biggest challenge in building consensus quickly? How could the phrases we learned today help?
Question 4. Can you think of a situation where you needed to negotiate under time pressure? What phrases could you use next time?
Question 5. How do you balance being agile with maintaining quality in your work? What phrases could help you explain this to others?
Question 6. Think about a recent change in your industry or market. How did companies respond, and what phrases might they have used?
Question 7. What's one phrase from today's episode that you want to start using immediately? How will you practice it?
Question 8. How can you stay customer-focused while moving quickly? What new perspective did you gain from today's conversation?
Question 9. In your workplace, who are the key stakeholders you need to get buy-in from? What phrases could help you communicate with them?
Question 10. How do you plan to continue learning and practicing business English in agile environments? What resources will you use?
Take your time thinking about these questions, and don't worry if you don't have all the answers right now. The important thing is that you're building awareness and preparing for real situations.
And remember, practice makes progress. Try to use at least one new phrase today.
Hey, English learners! Thank you so much for joining us today on the English Daily Podcast.
We hope you feel more confident now when encountering these business agility terms in English language media. Knowledge is power.
Remember, the key to mastering these phrases is practice. Try using them in your own conversations, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn.
And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with friends who want to improve their business English. Every learner counts.
We'll see you next time. Keep up the great work and keep speaking English every day.
Bye for now, everyone. See you next time on the English Daily Podcast.
Your learning journey doesn't stop here. Keep improving your English. Click the next video or explore more episodes we've picked just for you. See you in the next lesson.